My wife started using the word independence, the way people start using the word diet. Casually at first, almost like a joke. I just need more independence, she'd say, laughing it off as she scraped the last of the pasta into the trash. The two untouched plates between us, glowing under the kitchen light like evidence. Her fork marks were the only proof we'd even tried to have dinner. It was early autumn. That gray point in the city where the evenings arrive before you're ready, dragging the rain behind them. The apartment always smelled faintly of coffee and damp wool then, like mornings that never quite woke up. She had started coming home later. At first it was 10 minutes, then an hour, then whole evenings swallowed by vague explanations, late meeting. Traffic was insane. Just needed a walk to clear my head. Her phone lived face down now, notifications silenced. A small black rectangle like a closed door between us. I told myself it was stress. Her company was going through changes. She'd mentioned new teams, new managers, new expectations that followed her home like a shadow she could not shake. I believed her because it was easier than believing the alternative. But the distance crept in the way dust does. Slowly, quietly, without one clear moment where you can say, there, that's when everything changed. The first time I really felt it, we were at dinner. Same table, same two plates, same gray light pressing against the windows. She was scrolling through her phone, thumb moving in soft, rhythmic arcs, the blue glow washing her face colder than the weather outside. I watched her instead of eating, like I was trying to memorize someone I no longer recognized. "Lena," I said. She didn't look up. "Can you just put that away for a second? I haven't really seen you all week." She set the phone down with exaggerated care, face down, screen dark. Her eyes, when they finally met mine, were tired and far away. "I'm just overwhelmed," she said. "Work is insane, I told you." "I know," I replied. "I'm not saying it isn't. I searched for words that didn't sound like accusations. I miss you, that's all." She sighed, leaning back, crossing her arms like she was bracing for an argument that hadn't arrived yet. "You always make this about you," she said. "I tell you I'm stressed, and suddenly we're talking about how you feel." It stung because it was partly true. I was making it about me, because our life was supposed to be about us, and somewhere along the way, us had dissolved into two separate islands sharing a kitchen. "I'm trying to understand you," I said quietly. "Well, maybe I don't want to be understood all the time," she snapped. "Maybe I just want space, independence, some room to breathe." The word landed between us, independence, not as a joke this time, not wrapped in laughter. It sounded like paperwork. That night she slept with her back to me, the distance between our bodies feeling wider than any city street. I lay there, watching the faint glow from the streetlights draw soft rectangles on the ceiling, listening to the hum of distant traffic and the occasional hiss of tires on wet asphalt. The rain tapped at the window like someone asking to be let in. Over the next few weeks, the word kept returning. "I'm thinking I might take a solo trip next month, just me, for my independence. I might get my own place near the office for a while, independence. I don't want to feel like I'm reporting to someone. I need independence." Every time she said it, something in my chest loosened and then tightened again, like a knot being slowly untied and retied by invisible hands. I started noticing little things. A second toothbrush in her bag that wasn't mine. New lingerie receipt folded into the pocket of her coat, the kind she never wore at home. The way she smiled at her phone, soft, private, almost shy, before tucking it away when she saw me watching. One evening, the apartment felt especially empty. The rain hadn't stopped all day, the windows filmed with condensation, the city outside reduced to soft halos of light and blurred silhouettes. I was washing dishes from a dinner I'd eaten alone when her phone buzzed on the counter. Normally, she kept it close. Tonight, she'd left it behind in her rush to grab a drink with coworkers. I almost didn't look. Almost, the screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, no last name. Just Evan Crescent Moon. The message preview was small, a single line that changed everything. "Can't wait to see you again. Miss your laugh already." My hands went still under the water. The plate slipped from my fingers, knocking against the sink with a sharp, ceramic clink that felt too loud for the quiet kitchen. I picked up the phone, stared at it, felt the weight of dozens of choices pressing together in that one moment. I could open it. Scroll, look for proof that would burn itself into my memory forever, or I could put it down, pretend I hadn't seen anything, let the question hang in the air like the steam from the sink. My reflection wavered in the dark window, distorted by the raindrops streaming down the glass. The man staring back at me looked older than he had that morning. I set the phone back, face down. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the plates in the cupboard. When she came home later, dripping from the rain, cheeks flushed from the cold or the drinks or something else entirely, she smiled at me with a warmth that felt borrowed. "Hey," she said, shrugging off her coat, "you're still up." I watched her cross the room, watched her pick up the phone, glance at the screen, and then quickly lock it again. Her movements were just a little too careful. "How was it?" I asked. She hesitated. "Good, just needed to decompress." Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. The distance between us, invisible but undeniable, stretched tight like a wire. Later that week, after another late night and another excuse, the word finally came fully formed, in the soft gray of a Sunday morning. We sat at opposite ends of the couch, mugs of coffee cooling slowly on the table, the TV playing some muted show neither of us watched. "I've been thinking," she said. My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever followed that sentence. "I want more independence," she continued. "I don't know who I am anymore. I feel trapped, like I'm living the life everyone else expected of me, not the one I chose." "Are you saying you want to leave?" My voice sounded small, even to me. She shook her head quickly. "No, I don't know, maybe some time apart, maybe separate places for a while. I need to figure myself out." "And Evan?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flinched, just a fraction. "Barely there, but enough." "Who?" she asked too fast. "The one who misses your laugh," I said quietly. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we had ever had. The muted TV flickered in the corner, colors shifting across the walls as if trying to fill the space between us. Finally, she exhaled. "It's not what you think," she said. "He's just a friend from work, someone I can talk to, someone who doesn't make me feel guilty for wanting my own life." "Do you want him?" I asked. Her eyes glistened. "I don't know what I want," she whispered. "I just know I can't keep living like this." The coffee had gone cold. The room felt too bright and too dim at the same time. "Then say it," I said. "Say what you're really asking me for." She stared at her hands, at the wedding band on her finger that she twisted unconsciously. "I want independence," she repeated, softer this time. "From us." "From everything." The words sat there between us, final and fragile. Something inside me gave way, not with the explosion I had always feared, but with a quiet, internal crack, like ice breaking beneath the surface of a frozen lake. "Okay," I said at last. "If that's what you want, I'll give it to you." I watched her look up, surprised, like she hadn't expected me to agree. In that still, gray morning, with the city humming faintly beyond the windows and our coffee untouched, I made the choice to walk away from the woman who claimed she needed independence more than she needed me. What I did not know, as I stood and walked down the hallway to start packing a life into boxes, was how quickly the meaning of independence would change once she realized I was actually willing to let her have it. Moving out did not happen in one dramatic scene. There were no slammed doors, no shattered plates, no neighbors peeking through peepholes. It happened slowly, over several quiet days, like a tide moving out and never quite coming back. I found a small apartment 15 minutes away. 6th floor, concrete balcony with a rusted railing. The kind of place that always smelled faintly of someone else's cooking and the hallway's stale detergent. The first night there, I slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the soft hiss of rain against the windows. The city's distant traffic hummed like a white noise machine I hadn't asked. The silence inside the apartment, without her footsteps, without her humming as she moved between rooms, was so thick it felt physical. People always tell you that heartbreak is loud. In reality, it is mostly quiet. It lives in the spaces where someone used to be, in the empty chair across the kitchen table, in the side of the bed that stays cold. Lena and I had agreed, if that is the right word, that we would take some time apart. She called it a trial separation. I called it what it really was, at least in my head. The soft launch of an ending. For the first week, we texted sporadically. Logistics, bills, what to do about the plants. Then slowly, even those messages thinned out. The nights were worst. I would lie awake, watching the pattern of headlights sweep across the ceiling, each brief oval of light an echo of a life moving past mine. Sometimes in that half-conscious space between waking and sleep, I would reach out to the right, searching for her warmth, only to feel the cool emptiness of the mattress. I tried distracting myself. Long walks in the rain-soaked streets, late-night runs to the 24-hour grocery store, where the fluorescent lights made everyone look like they were living someone else's life. I started going to the gym, not because I cared about my body, but because focusing on the burn in my muscles was easier than thinking about the burn in my chest. But even in those moments, she was there. In the song that played over the speakers, in the scent of someone else's shampoo on the elevator, in the sound of a woman's laugh that matched hers just enough to make my heart stutter. I tried not to imagine her, failed. In my mind, I saw her at some dimly lit bar with him, Evan, the man who missed her laugh already. I pictured them sitting too close, knees brushing, her tilting her head in that way she always did when she wanted to appear fully present. I imagined her telling him the same stories she once told me, laughing in the same places, only now he was the one across from her. I hated him. Not with the fire I expected, but with a cold, steady ache. He represented everything I wasn't, new, unburdened by history, untouched by the mundane routines that marriage lays over love like dust. One night, after too many hours of staring at the ceiling and not enough sleep, I made the mistake of checking her social media. Her profile had always been curated, honest enough to feel real, but polished enough to seem aspirational. Now there were subtle changes, more photos of nights out, captions about finding herself and choosing her own path. In one picture, blurred and almost incidental, I saw him, barely, a shoulder, a jawline, the corner of a smile that didn't belong to me. That was the first night I didn't sleep at all. I waited for dawn like it was an apology that never came. Days turned into weeks. I went to work, answered emails, smiled at colleagues, went through the motions of a life that looked normal from the outside. Inside, I was living in the aftermath of a storm that no one else could see. I found traces of their affair everywhere I looked, even in places they had never been together. In a cafe where a woman laughed too loudly. In the couple on the train, hands intertwined, heads bent toward each other, sharing some private joke. I wondered if Lena and Evan had places like that now, corners of the city that belonged to them. There were good days, too. Days when I woke up, made coffee, opened the window to let in the cool morning air, and felt, if not okay, then at least. I bought a small plant for the windowsill, watched the way its leaves angled toward the light. I started cooking again, simple meals, one plate, no expectation of conversation. Slowly, I began to build a shape around the empty space she had left. The turning point came on a Tuesday, rain again. The city looked washed out, the buildings pale and indistinct through the streaked glass of the office window. I was halfway through an email when my phone buzzed. "Lena, can we talk?" It read. My chest tightened. Sure, I typed back. When? "Now if you're free." We agreed to meet at the cafe near our old place. Neutral ground, I told myself, public enough to keep the conversation civil. I arrived early and sat by the window, fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee I barely tasted. Outside, people moved under umbrellas, small clusters of color in a gray world. When she walked in, the air shifted. Same woman, same Lena, but somehow different. Her hair was pulled back loosely, raindrops clinging to the strands near her temple. She wore a coat I'd never seen before, deep green, cinched at the waist. She looked lighter, not happier exactly, but unmoored. "Hey," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Hey." For a few seconds, we just sat there, looking at each other over the steam rising from our cups. Everything unspoken sat between us, like a third person at the table. "How have you been?" she asked. "I've been," I paused, adjusting. She nodded, her eyes dropping to her coffee. "Yeah, me too." There was a beat of silence, then she exhaled. "I've been seeing someone," she said. The words landed gently, as if we were talking about the weather. "They still hurt, I know," I said. Her head snapped up. "You do." I shrugged. "Your phone, the messages, the pictures. I'm not an idiot, Lena." She winced. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. A small, humorless laugh escaped me. "You never meant to, or you just didn't think about it." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I was drowning," she said quietly. "I felt invisible. I tried to tell you, but it always felt like you heard the words without hearing me." "So you found someone who did," I replied. She didn't deny it, didn't try to soften it. She just nodded, eyes glistening. "He listens," she whispered. "He makes me feel seen, like I'm more than just someone's wife." The words stung, but underneath the sting there was a strange clarity. She hadn't just chosen him. She had chosen a version of herself. She didn't know how to be with me anymore. "Is that what this is then?" I asked. "Is this you telling me it's over?" She shook her head. "That's the thing," she said. "I don't know. I thought this is what I wanted. Independence, a chance to figure myself out. But now." She trailed off, staring out the window. watching the rain trace paths down the glass. "Now what?" I asked. "Now I miss you," she said, voice barely audible over the hum of the cafe. "I miss us, the way you make coffee too strong, the way you leave your books open on the arm of the couch, the stupid way you hum under your breath when you're concentrating." My chest tightened, an image flashed through my mind. Our apartment, the empty chair, the cold side of the bed. Her absence had become a shape I'd learned to live around. Now she was here, asking to step back inside the outline she had left. "I'm not saying I deserve it," she continued. "I know I broke something, but I had to know what it felt like to be free. And now that I do, I realize freedom without you doesn't feel like freedom at all. It just feels lonely." I stared at her, at the woman who had asked for independence, and then filled that space with another. At the woman who now sat in front of me, eyes wet, hands trembling slightly around her cup. "You're still seeing him?" I asked. She looked away. "Yes," she whispered. The honesty burned and soothed at the same time. "So you're here," I said slowly, "telling me you miss me while you're still with him." She closed her eyes briefly. "I know how it sounds." "It sounds like you want both," I said. Her silence was answer enough. Outside, a car splashed through a puddle, sending a wave of water against the curb. Inside, the barista called out someone's name, the sound distant and ordinary. In that small, crowded cafe, with rain blurring the world beyond the glass, I realized I had reached a crossroads I had not prepared for. She wanted independence, had taken it, and now, standing halfway between the life we had and the man she'd chosen as her escape, she was reaching back for me. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to reach back. I wrapped my hands tighter around my cup, feeling the last of the warmth seep into my fingertips, and understood that whatever I said next would change everything, not just for her, but for the man I was slowly becoming without her. Her return did not happen with suitcases at the door or a dramatic declaration in the rain. It arrived in fragments, short messages, unexpected calls, moments that slipped into my days like shadows lengthening with the afternoon light. After the cafe, there was space again. Not the space she had demanded in the name of independence, but a quieter, more uncertain distance. We went days without talking, then one of us would break the silence with something small. "How's work?" "The plant on your windowsill would probably still be alive if I had it. Do you remember that tiny Italian place on 8th? Each message pulled at a thread that had never fully snapped. I learned piece by piece about her life with him, though she never used his name. "He doesn't know how I take my coffee yet," she texted once. "You always got it right." Another time, "Sometimes I talk too much when I'm nervous. He doesn't notice. You always did." The irony was bitter and soft at the same time. She had walked away to feel seen, and now she was writing to the person she had left to describe how unseen she felt. One evening, weeks later, I came home to my apartment and found her sitting on the floor outside my door. The hallway light flickered above her, casting her in alternating bands of brightness and shadow. She had her knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them like she was trying to make herself smaller. "Hey," she said, standing as I approached. My heart stumbled. "Lena, what are you doing here?" She looked tired, not just physically. There was a heaviness around her eyes, a slackness to her shoulders that I hadn't seen even during the worst of our arguments. "Can we talk?" she asked. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to protect the fragile equilibrium I had finally started to find. But history and habit are powerful things. I unlocked the door and stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was dim, the only light coming from the window where the city's glow seeped in, soft and distant. She stepped inside slowly, looking around like she was entering a museum dedicated to a version of me she no longer knew. "You changed the couch," she said. "I bought a new one," I replied. "The old one didn't fit here." She nodded, fingers trailing along the back of the chair, pausing on the spine of a book I'd left open. "You still do that," she murmured. "Leave them like they're mid-breaths." I moved to the kitchen, if only to have something to do with my hands. "Do you want coffee?" She smiled faintly. "Too strong, remember." I almost smiled back, almost. We ended up at the small table by the window, mugs between us, the distant sound of traffic drifting up from the street below. For a while we just sat there, listening to the city. "I moved out of his place," she said finally. The words hung there, quiet but heavy. "I didn't realize you'd moved in," I said. She shrugged. "It wasn't official. I just stayed over more than I didn't." Slowly my toothbrush appeared, then a drawer, then half a closet. I pictured it. The gradual encroachment of her life into someone else's space, the same way she had once moved into mine. "What happened?" I asked. She took a deep breath. At first, it felt like everything I thought I wanted, she said. No expectations, no history, just possibility. He listened, he asked questions, he made me feel like the most interesting person in the room. And then, and then, she continued, eyes on her hands, real life showed up. He still had dirty dishes in the sink. He still forgot to text back sometimes. He still got distracted by work, by his phone, by his own thoughts. It turns out, even with someone new, I'm still me. I still feel restless. Still feel unfinished. There was no triumph in her voice, only a quiet exhaustion. I kept waiting for this feeling of freedom to settle into something solid, she said, but it never did. I just felt unanchored. Like I'd cut myself loose from something steady and was now drifting without a map. And him, I asked. She hesitated. He's not a bad person, she said. He never promised me anything he didn't mean. I projected a lot onto him. Used him as a doorway out of a life I didn't know how to fix. That's not on him, that's on me. The admission surprised me, not because she was wrong, but because she was finally saying the thing I'd always suspected she knew. So why are you here? I asked quietly. She looked up then, really looked at me. I keep thinking about the morning light in our old kitchen, she said, the way it came in slantwise through the blinds, cutting across the table. You'd sit there with your coffee, eyes half closed, and for a few minutes everything felt calm, like the world could wait. I remembered those mornings, how the hum of the fridge had been the loudest sound, how her bare feet had padded softly across the tiles. I miss that, she said. I miss you, not just as my husband, as my quiet place. The words pulled something deep in me. A longing I had been holding at arm's length surged forward, colliding with all the hurt she had caused. And what about your independence? I asked. She closed her eyes briefly, a tear escaping down her cheek. I thought independence meant being alone, she said. Now I think it means knowing who you are, whether you're alone or not. I wanted to run away from myself. I used you. I used him. And in the end, I still had to sit with me. The rain began again, soft at first, tapping against the glass like cautious fingers. I'm not asking you to forget, she said. I'm not even asking you to take me back. I needed to tell you that I see what I did. I see you. And if there is any part of you that still. Her voice broke. She took a shaky breath. That still wants to try. I would spend the rest of my life trying to rebuild what I broke. The room felt very small. Her words filled it, mixing with the sound of the rain and the faint honk of a car. I thought of the nights I had spent alone, of the way I had slowly learned to enjoy my own company again, of the plant on the windowsill, leaning toward the light without anyone telling it which way to grow. I don't know if I can go back, I said finally. She nodded, tears slipping silently onto the table. I understand. That's the problem, I continued. There is no back, there's only forward, and I don't know what forward with you looks like anymore. She reached across the table then, fingers stopping just short of mine. I'm not the same person I was when I left, she said. You're not the same person you were when you watched me go. Maybe that's the point. The temptation to close the gap between our hands was overwhelming. I could almost feel the ghost of her touch, the way her thumb would trace the lines on my palm, the way her fingers fit between mine like they had been made for that shape. I need time, I said. She let her hand fall back into her lap. I've taken so much of it already, she whispered. I'll give you as much as you need. She stood then, moving toward the door slowly, as if each step required permission. At the threshold, she turned back. For what it's worth, she said, leaving you didn't make me free. It just made me aware of the parts of me I'd been ignoring. You deserved honesty. You deserved someone who chose you every day. I didn't do that. I'm sorry. The apology was simple. No arguments, no justifications, just a quiet, heavy truth. When the door closed behind her, the apartment felt impossibly empty. I stood there for a long time, listening to the muffled sound of her footsteps fading down the hallway, until even that was gone. In the days that followed, her presence lingered like the afterimage of looking into a bright light. I found myself replaying our conversation in my head, the way her voice had trembled, the steadiness in her eyes when she took responsibility. Friends offered opinions when I finally told a few of them. Once a cheater, always a cheater. People can change if they want it badly enough. You deserve better. You'll never find that history with someone else. They were all right. And all wrong because this wasn't a debate to be won. It was a life, my life. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the buildings in soft gold, I realized something that startled me in its simplicity. I could forgive her and still not return. Forgiveness did not have to be a ticket back into the same story. It could simply be the closing of a chapter. Weeks later, she texted again, "Can I see you? One last time, if that's what you want it to be." I stared at the screen for a long moment, the glow of it reflected in the window, overlaying my reflection with her words. After a long breath, I typed back, "Come tomorrow morning. Early." As I set the phone down, the apartment fell quiet again, filled with the soft hum of the fridge and the faint sound of the city settling into night. Tomorrow, under the honest light of morning, I would finally decide not just what to do with her apology, but what kind of man I wanted to be on the other side of all. Morning has a way of stripping things down to their truth. No dim corners. No soft shadows, just light, clean, and unforgiving. When she arrived, the city was still rubbing sleep from its eyes. The street outside was quiet, the usual rush hour hum still a distant promise. The sky was pale, the kind of gray that hinted at eventual blue. I had left the door slightly ajar. She knocked anyway, then opened it cautiously. "Hey," she said, stepping inside. She carried no bag, no box, nothing that suggested a move, just herself. She looked calmer. Not untouched by what had happened between us, but steadier within it. Her eyes met mine and did not flinch. "Coffee?" I asked. She smiled softly. "Too strong," she said again. I poured her a cup anyway and slid it across the table, the steam curling up between us like a fragile bridge. We sat in the same place as last time, chairs slightly angled toward the window, letting the morning light do what it does best, make everything feel a little more honest. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. I nodded. "I've been thinking about what you said." She wrapped her hands around the mug, not drinking. "Me too," she replied, "about what you didn't say too." A faint smile tugged at my lips. "You always were good at reading the quiet parts." For a moment we just let the silence settle. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of the nights before I left. This one had room in it. "I loved you," I said finally. The present tense hovered on my tongue, but I let the past stand. "I still do, in a way. I probably always will." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I love you too," she said. That never stopped, even when I was with him. Even when I was trying to convince myself I had outgrown us. "That's the part that hurts the most," I admitted, "that you could love me and still leave the way you did." She nodded slowly. "I've spent a lot of nights sitting with that," she said, "trying to understand how I could do something so opposite to what I felt." "Did you find an answer?" She took a breath. "I think I was chasing a version of myself I thought I'd lost," she said. "I wanted to be the girl who had options again. The girl who could be desired without the weight of bills and laundry and long days in the office. You were never the prison, but I used you like the bars in my head." The honesty was sharp and clean. "I can forgive the confusion," I said. "I can even understand the fear. What I struggle to forgive is the way you kept me in the dark. The way you let me question my own sanity while you built something with someone else." A tear slid down her cheek. "I was cowardly," she said simply. "I wanted the comfort of you and the excitement of him. I thought I could figure it out while still holding both. It was selfish. There's no way to soften that." The words landed like stones, not to crush but to mark a grave. We sat there, two people acknowledging a truth that had lived between us for too long without a name. "I realized something," I said, looking past her toward the window, where the light was starting to warm. "You asked for independence. I thought that meant you wanted to be away from me, but what you really needed was independence from who you were, with or without me." She nodded. "And you?" "I thought I was the steady one," I said, "the anchor, the safe place. But when you left, I realized I didn't know how to exist outside of being your husband. I'd built my entire identity around us." She smiled sadly. "Maybe we both lost ourselves in the marriage," she said. "Maybe," I agreed. "But here's the thing, Lena. I've started to find myself again. In the mornings alone with my coffee, in the routines that are mine and mine alone, in the way I've learned to sit with my own thoughts without trying to drown them out." "And where does that leave us?" she asked, voice small. The question hung there, delicate and dangerous. I looked at her, the woman I had promised forever to, the woman who had broken that promise, the woman who had finally come back not to reclaim the old life, but to own what she had done. "I forgive you," I said. Her breath caught, the words seemed to hit her physically, shoulders shaking with a release she hadn't let herself imagine. "You do?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, "not because what you did was okay, not because it didn't hurt, but because I refused to spend the rest of my life carrying this bitterness like a second skin. I forgive you so that I can be free." Tears spilled over now, running freely down her face. "Thank you," she said. "You don't know what that means." I think I do, I replied quietly. She wiped at her cheeks, laughing softly through the tears. I want to ask you for another chance, she said. Every part of me wants to. But I promised myself I'd respect whatever you decide, even if it's the one thing that breaks me all over again. I took a long breath. Another chance isn't something I can give lightly, I said. It would mean starting a new relationship, not resuming the old one. It would mean both of us doing years of work, counseling, accountability, patience, and even then there are no guarantees. I know, she said, I would do all of it. Every step. That's the problem, I continued gently. I'm not sure I want to, not because you're undeserving of growth, but because I am finally learning how to stand on my own feet. And I want to see where that path leads, without immediately folding myself back around us. Silence again, this time it ached. So this is it, she asked. This is goodbye. I looked out at the morning. The light had shifted from gray to a soft, cautious gold. The city was fully awake now, cars moving, people walking, life happening whether we were ready for it or not. I don't think love always ends with a door slamming, I said. Sometimes it ends like this, in a quiet room, with two people who still care about each other choosing different futures. Her shoulders shook once, a small, contained sob. She pressed her hand to her mouth, as if trying to hold the sound in. I want you to be happy, I said, the words rough. Truly, whether that's alone or with someone else or with a version of yourself you haven't met yet. I just don't think I can be the one holding your hand while you figure that out anymore. She nodded, eyes overflowing. I understand, she whispered. I hate it, but I understand. After a long moment, she stood. Her chair scraped softly against the floor, a small, ordinary sound that felt like an ending. She moved around the table, hesitated, then leaned down and pressed her lips to my forehead. It was the gentlest of goodbyes. Thank you, she said again, voice breaking, for loving me, for letting me go. She turned and walked to the door. This time I didn't follow, didn't call her back. The door closed with a soft click, no slam. Just a quiet punctuation at the end of a long, tangled sentence. I sat there for a while, staring at the empty chair across from me. The morning light pooled on the table, warm on my hands. Outside, the city carried on, buses sighing to a stop, distant horns, the faint rhythm of footsteps on the sidewalk. There was a heaviness in my chest, but beneath it something else, a lightness, a sense of space where something tight had once been wounded. I stood and moved to the window. The plant on the sill had grown since I'd first brought it home. Its leaves now reached confidently toward the glass. I turned it slightly, giving it more room to breathe. In the reflection, I saw myself, not as a husband or an ex-husband or a betrayed man, just a man. Standing in a small apartment, in a waking city, on a morning that felt like a beginning. I forgive you, I repeated softly, this time to the empty room. And I forgive me, too, for not seeing, for not leaving sooner. For loving someone who didn't know how to stay. The words settled into the quiet. I poured the rest of the coffee down the sink, washed the mugs, and opened the window. Cool air rushed in, carrying with it the sound of the day. There was no dramatic music. No slow-motion montage. Just the ordinary miracle of a morning where the weight was a little less heavy than the night. I sat back at the table, sunlight warming my face, and let the silence sit beside me, not as an absence but as a companion. For the first time in a long time, the empty chair across from me did not feel like a loss. It felt like a space where someday something new might sit, maybe someone, maybe just a better version of myself. For now, it was enough to breathe, to listen to the city, to feel the morning light on my skin, and know, quietly, that letting go of the woman who begged to come back was not a failure of love, but an act of it. Failure of love, but an act of it.